we've talked about this before, and we're just going to keep talking about it until it's no longer a problem, but that attracting, hiring, and retaining young people is a challenge. It's a big challenge. And so what we're doing is, with the 40 Under 40 program, we're recognizing and celebrating the young people who are young leaders under 40. But what we wanted to do is incorporate that into the conference as well. So we asked Jennifer Castenson to moderate this panel. She did one yesterday too for the Women of LBM session with women who are in our 40 Under 40 group. And so these are, three more. And this is, okay, forget it. All right, so what else? That's all I got. I'm gonna let you guys take it before I keep stumbling over my words. Okay.
Thank you, Rick. Oh my gosh, it's a privilege to be here and an honor to be here with these young leaders. And thank you, Rick, so much for everything you've done for this event, and Michelle and Mike and Sally. And it's so awesome to meet all the new staff and be part of this event, which is one of my favorite every year. So we're going to be talking about a topic that is really important right now: how to attract and retain the next generation. So I just watched last week one of the economists from NHB talk about the labor market, and she said we're 2 million jobs short in construction right now. 2 million empty jobs. So if we could raise your hand if you are 100% fully staffed right now. Oh, we got a couple. That's awesome. Oh, no, you guys are in the same company.
We don't
Nice,
count.
nice. How about like 90% staffed? Okay, all right, that's a few. 80%? Is anybody below or around 50%? Okay, all right, we're all upwards of 50%, that's awesome. Okay, so what we're gonna hear from these guys is they're gonna teach us how we can retain and attract, and then you're gonna start understanding why they're recognized as 40 under 40, because their leadership skills are well beyond, and just like Rick said, the women on the panel yesterday are the same. So we're gonna go through a few things, and we're gonna start with some really fast intros. Carrie, starting with you.
My name is Carrie Gaviria. I am the president of Madison Wood Preservers. We sell treated lumber and agricultural fence posts, and I've been there for 11 years.
All right, I'm John Perna, president and CEO of Hamilton Building Supply, based in central New Jersey. We serve custom home builders, remodelers, renovators throughout the Philadelphia metro suburbs, through the Jersey Shore and central New Jersey area.
Hey everybody, David Qualls, Regional Sales Manager for Par Lumber. We cover Oregon and Washington, have 45 locations in the Northwest. I've been with Par about 4 years, and it's been an incredible company to come work for, and I'm really excited to share with you guys a little bit about our culture and our leadership development.
Awesome, thank you, you guys. Okay, so now we're gonna make this a little interactive too, because we're gonna start with a speed round. Which means that they can only answer with one word or one sentence answers. And I will kick you off stage if you don't follow rules. And then I'm also going to choose one lucky participant in the audience to answer the same question as well. So, all right, starting. And we're just gonna go left to right every time on these first four, okay? Favorite book on leadership?
Leaders Eat Last, Simon Sinek.
Go Giver by Bob Berg.
21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, John Maxwell.
Nah, you knew I was coming for you.
Patent on leadership.
Nice. Okay, name the most essential value of a good leader.
Resiliency/grit.
Authenticity.
Empathy.
Well, David stole mine. I was going to say empathy too.
You can both have the same answer. What is the most critical trait you look for when recruiting new talent?
Good attitude.
Willingness to learn.
The right fit.
I like how people are not looking directly at me.
Cultural fit.
What one thing makes a company most attractive to you?
Autonomy.
Doing what they say they're going to do versus just talking about it.
A strong purpose and culture.
Yeah, culture, yeah.
Culture. The really undefined culture. Well, thank you for participating, people in the audience. I appreciate it. Okay, so now we're just going to go. We've talked. Simon Sinek's name has come up a couple times. Rick was talking about him. We mentioned his book here, and I'm going to play a quick reel.
Oh, I almost sent this to you.
Oh,
I know what you're
too
gonna
funny.
say.
Yeah, maybe. Oops, I'll take it away.
So funny.
There are two things that I think that great leaders need to have: empathy and perspective. And I think these things are very often forgotten. Leaders are so often so concerned about their status or their position in an organization, they actually forget their real job. And the real job of a leader is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in our charge. And I don't think people realize this, and I don't think people train for this. When we're junior, our only responsibility is to be good at our jobs. That's all that we really have to do. And some people actually go get advanced educations so that they can be really good at their jobs, accountants or whatever, right? And you show up and you work hard, and the company will give us tons and tons of training how to do our jobs. They'll show us how to use the software. They'll send us away for a few days to get trained in whatever it is that we're doing for the company. And then they expect us to go be good at our jobs. And that's what we do. We work very hard. And if you're good at your job, they'll promote you. And at some point, you'll get promoted to a position where we're now responsible for the people who do the job we used to do, but nobody shows us how to do that. And that's why we get managers and not leaders. Because the reason our managers are micromanaging us is because they actually do know how to do the job better than us. That's what got them promoted. Really what we have to do is go through a transition. Some people make it quickly, some people make it slowly, and unfortunately some people will never make that transition at all. Which is we have to go through this transition of being responsible for the job and then turning into somebody who's now responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. And as I said before, one of the great things that is lacking in most of our companies is that they are not teaching us how to lead. And leadership is a skill like any other. It is a practicable, learnable skill. And it is something that you work on. It's like a muscle. If you practice it all the days, you will get good at it and you will become a strong leader. If you stop practicing, you will become a weak leader. Like parenting, everyone has the capacity to be a parent. Doesn't mean everybody wants to be a parent, and doesn't mean everybody should be a parent. Leadership is the same. We all have the capacity to be a leader. Doesn't mean everybody should be a leader, and it doesn't mean everybody wants to be a leader. And the reason is because it comes at great personal sacrifice. Remember, you're not in charge, you're responsible for those in your charge. That means things like when everything goes right, you have to give away all the credit. And when everything goes wrong, you have to take all the responsibility. That sucks, right? It's things like staying late to show somebody what to do. It's things like when something does actually break, when something goes wrong, instead of yelling and screaming and taking over, you say, try again. When the overwhelming pressures are not on them, the overwhelming pressures are on us. At the end of the day, great leaders are not responsible for the job. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. They're not even responsible for the results. I love talking to CEOs and say, what's your priority? And they put their hands on their hips all proudly and say, my priority is my customer. I'm like, really? You haven't talked to a customer in 15 years. There's no CEO on the planet responsible for the customer. They're just not. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the people who are responsible for the customer.
Thank you, Simon. Okay. All right, so David, if you'll start us off, if you can just back it up one slide, Al, so we have this great panel up. Okay, so starting with you, David, what is the real job of a leader? And if you can, just color in with some examples of leaders that you've met in your career and how they embodied those traits.
Sure. I think the purpose of a leader is really to work for your team, kind of that servant leadership mentality. Our job is to serve our team. And to do that, we really need to be able to build a solid relationship, a meaningful relationship with them, and because that'll help us understand how they need to be led better. And as a leader, we need to realize that every individual needs to be led a little bit differently. And so early in my career, I was told, don't fraternize, don't hang out with employees outside of work. And then John Maxwell kind of changed my thinking on that to where he said, you really have to genuinely get to know your team if you want to serve them the right way. And so I changed that little thing in my career, and it really allowed me to build some deep, lasting relationships and be a better leader for my team. I worked also for a manager that was actually a John Maxwell certified leader that kind of coached me through that transition as well.
John, how about you?
I think the purpose of a leader really, you have to be able to communicate clearly, be very focused and intentional, with the tasks or the processes that you want your team to sort of follow. The team is only going to be as effective as you allow them to be. So it's really important that you're being very clear with the direction and showing them a way for them to be successful, but also letting them fail along the way too, learn from their mistakes, and then ultimately become stronger as a result.
So John, one thing that I've noticed about you and your team is that you invite them to have fun with you. How do you keep a clear distinction between being the leader and having fun and not being taken advantage of because you're having fun?
Sure. So it's really important from a cultural standpoint that we have very real conversations, and we celebrate our wins. We celebrate some of the more fun aspects of our company because again we're working together for 40, 50, 60 hours a week. There are times where we want to do some more fun things, whether it's on social media or events. And there's a time and a place to invite people in for that, and really bring out like their more creative side and just who they really are as a person, and allow them to enjoy something else besides just the daily processes of selling building materials. There's a time for that, and then you compartmentalize it, and then you put it out there, and then there's a time for everything else. So we don't, when we do those sorts of things, we definitely have clearly defined, times in which we, focus in on that. Don't make a big thing of it, and then we move on.
Carrie, first question to you. So what's the real job of a leader, and who in your career path has embodied that you can share with us?
I really like the analogy of athletics. The best leaders that I've met are generally good coaches. As a young professional, I think I'm transitioning and trying to learn going from the athlete on the court where I feel comfortable to delegating and communicating that. So the best leaders that I've met in my career are able to effectively communicate the strategy, and they're able to put the right players at the right place at the right time, focusing on their strengths. So I think that's what I'm trying to obtain. That's what I'm trying to work towards, is learning some of those techniques to communicate the strategy, instead of jumping in and trying to run the play myself.
Awesome. So, David, when we did our prep call, you talked about the value of training. How much? Can you just talk about that a little bit, and then talk about how much a company should invest in training?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at the data, and I don't have any numbers to share with you today, but most of the turnover is a result in the first 30 to 90 days of a new hire's employment, and a lot of that reason is because of lack of training, and they haven't been kind of married into that family and culture yet, and so they get frustrated and they leave. And so training is very critical to any successful organization. And at PAR, we put our money where our mouth is in that. Last year, we actually created and hired a director of culture and training. And we built out that team of support that work in that department. And we put training leads in every location. So that way, when a new hire gets started, they have support from day one. And they have somebody walking them along to learn who we are, what we do, the job itself. They're making sure everybody's getting their training on the stuff that comes up annually. And so we take it very seriously at PAR, and we invest a lot of time and money and energy into the success of our employees. So that way we can get a better return on that investment, and we have employees that want to last a career and not just look for a job.
So it's in person. Are there online elements as well?
Yeah, we have a robust e-university, and then it's also mixed with some different in-person trainings.
And that's content that you created internally?
Yeah, through our training department through the years. I mean, we have some that were created 15 years ago that we revamped. But we have a team that creates those on an ongoing basis. And so we have a mix of new and stuff that we've done for a long time.
Yeah, awesome. So next question, Carrie, starting with you. What has been your biggest challenge as you've moved forward in your career?
I think it's what I just talked about. I think it's transitioning from being the athlete on the court. It's really hard to have an expectation, think that you communicated it clearly, and then watch somebody not run the play in the way that you think the play should be run. So it's a transitional mindset. We're lucky to have a lot of coaching on our side to help us do that. I'm learning to delegate. Delegating for me is difficult because I know I can get it done, and I know I can get it done quickly. And so I think it's a learning curve.
So what tool, if it existed, looking back in time, would have helped you get through that?
Well, I think I have the tool in place. I have a mentorship aspect. We have I think this is in your other questions, but we have a phased retirement program, and I think that helps with the brain drain. We're able to have somebody come in these management positions and slowly phase out, and it allows you to have some of the deep conversations where you're not being judged by a boss or any kind of not leader, but any kind of owner. For me, I'm not being talked to from an owner. I'm being talked to as a teammate to say, hey, I saw that you did all this work over here. You should have delegated that. And that's something that I think it's helpful to be pointed out in the manner that they're pointing it out, because it's not coming from a weird place of ownership, thinking that you did something wrong. It's purely teaching. It's purely mentorship.
John, how about you? What has been your biggest challenge?
I think for me, just being able to triage all the priorities that you have on your desk every single day and sort of sift through, like, okay, what's really important versus what's not worth my time. There's only so much time in a day, and there's an infinite number of things that we as leaders can be doing. So you really have to think critically, like, okay, is what I'm about to work on now, is that a good use of my time? And more importantly, is that supportive for the rest of my team?
David?
I think my biggest challenge in my career is I didn't grow up in this industry that I've grown to love like a lot of you have in this room. I came to PAR just under 4 years ago, and it was a big learning curve to learn this industry. And so I think the hardest part, and I've promoted twice since then, so I'm very blessed and fortunate, but the hardest part was, how do I set aside time for myself to develop, and at the same time give my team the attention that they need and deserve so that they can develop in their roles as well. Fortunately, I have an incredible team of support. Many of them have joined me for this presentation and this conference. And so I had unlimited lifelines with this team of peers to help me learn the business and understand everything, the ins and outs. And, they hired me for my leadership, and I'm figuring out the rest as I go.
So I'm going to go off track and off of our script for a second. I want you guys all to define you guys are all what generation?
Millennials.
Yeah, okay. Just making sure we're on the same.
By 2 years.
Yeah. What is a millennial? What would you say? What's the personality
I don't know if it's defining millennials, but I feel like I'm one of the bridges between the generations. I grew up with no internet. I didn't get internet until college. And so I have seen both worlds, which is unique. Because I think a lot of the kids today that they're going through the system, they've only seen internet, they've only seen technology. And a lot of the other generation isn't really up to par and doesn't think a lot of that. So I'm able to see both, which I think is really helpful.
I think millennials are really responsible for breaking down the stigmas of generations coming after us, right? There's always that generation to generation stigma. Oh, this generation doesn't work as hard as we did, and I mean that's been going on for all of time, right? So now it's important to say like, okay, Gen Z's next up. Let's focus on what they're doing really well and how they're hustling because it's out there, and how they can add more value to us as millennials and even our boomers that we have on staff too.
I think the generation before us was totally fine working by themselves and just grinding it out. And I think the millennial generation likes to have more of that inclusivity, that teamwork, and working together to solve problems. So I think that's the biggest difference with the millennial generation. And so just understanding that, I worked retail for a long time, right? And you'd see employees gathered up and the thought was, oh, they're just BSing talking. But really they're trying to work together because they're attracted to each other in that setting versus the generation before us.
Awesome. So, Carrie, you've been wildly successful in your career. I've been watching you for a number of years. It's amazing. Congratulations. Do you think that you've had a different experience as a female?
Let's do something fun. All the ladies, you raise your hand if you think you've had a different experience as a female. Right? So I've debated on how I would answer this and whether I would bring up kind of an example. An example for me would be that we're building a 4,000 square foot break room for our employees. I'm super, super excited about it. It's one of those culture things that we're pushing. The steel showed up. The trucker pulled into the wrong location. I ran outside because I was all amped. It was the first part of the project. And I looked at him like, hey, sir, would you mind parking up there? That's where we're going to have the project. And he looked at me and he's like, yeah, well, let me call the boss. I was like, okay, call him. Just kind of waiting it out. He called his boss, the guy that was building the building. He said, yeah, you're going to put it up there. And the guy looked at me and he's like, oh, you were right. I was like, well, yeah. He's like, what do you do here? Are you marketing? I'm like, no. I'm not marketing. And I was like, I'm a manager. And I don't normally tell people I'm the president because I like to see how they're going to treat me. And he's like, oh, they let you manage here? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, your daddy must own the place. I'm like, no, sir. No, sir, my dad doesn't own the place. I just work here. And he's like, well, what's your job? What do you manage? And I was like, I'm the president. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry. I get that all the time. And I think you guys do too. And you will if you haven't yet. But there's one thing that they can't discredit, and that is knowledge. If you are knowledgeable about your operations, about your product, about your industry, they stop seeing gender, they as in anybody, will stop seeing gender, race, age, all of those things go away. So I empower anybody that has dealt with that to be an expert at your product. And that initial misconception is just it's an immediate reaction, and it goes away. And once they respect you on a different level, it has never been a problem after that.
Well, thanks for sharing that. He's cute. So I'm going to go back to the training aspect. And you, David, you talked a lot about your training. What training or mentorship have you found the most valuable in this portion of your career or prior?
Sure. I've done a couple different cohorts. Salem, the city that I grew up in and where I office out of, did a Leadership Salem program, which is a 2-year thing. So that really helped me a lot. But I think where I've gotten most of my mentorship is through a close friend who has a leadership development company. And him and I just talk regularly and bounce ideas off of each other. He started this thing called the 5:30 a.m. Club about 2 years ago. And it was this group of about 20 of us that would get up every morning, and he'd ask a question, or we'd have to share something positive or something we're struggling with. And it really developed some camaraderie, and it ended up fizzling out, after doing it for about a year and a half. But I'm still very close with some of those people that I met through that little group text thing, and they're all local to Salem for the most part. And so just making sure that you're connected with some sort of organization. I serve on 4 different boards, and so I have a lot of people I can reach out to for advice and kind of walk through situations. And so I don't have a direct, one-on-one mentor like I probably should, but I have a lot of people that I look at to as mentors that I can reach out to in a time of need and walk through and talk to about some stuff.
Same question to you, John.
As far as
What training or development have you done?
As far as the training development. So I've had a lot of mentors over the years, and the best thing I've learned from the mentors, like the common denominator was, if I was going to make a decision, they would say, well, have you thought about how so-and-so is going to react to that? Or have you thought about how this person's going to react? It doesn't necessarily mean that they're a manager, or they could have been a low-level person or somebody working in the yard. But it really makes you take a step back and say, well, wait a minute, I better rethink that a little bit, because every decision you make may have unintended consequences. And it's important to take that into consideration. And that's probably the best thing I've learned from my mentors.
Carrie, to you.
I can't speak highly enough about the phased retirement program that we implemented. I think it's huge to our organization. We have 3 managers right now that are currently working 2 days a week in this program, so they're able to work alongside their replacement. Their replacement works 3 days a week where they don't have that support, and then the 2 days out of the week they do have that support. It's been really helpful for me personally, so much so that the past president is trying desperately to stay on for another year just on Tuesdays, because he loves coming in and walking the facility and talking to us about what decisions we're making. And just like John said, asking those questions, not telling you what to do, but just saying, have you thought about this? Have you looked over here? We've implemented that in our receiving department, in our HR department, and I think it's a slam dunk.
That's awesome. Do you have any personal training that you've done, or mentors that you found were the most valuable?
Well, the one is the past president. And so he is in that phased retirement program, and so he comes with me and we walk the yard every Tuesday. We go look at equipment. He teaches me what to look for on equipment. I don't have any major experience in mechanics, and so I need to be taught that this is off kilter, this is shifted. And just walking with people that have been there for 30 plus years and seeing what they look for when they look around, I think that's the information is usually in your organization. You just have to have the person that's willing to teach you to walk around and show you what you're looking for.
Awesome. So John's wife also owns a business. And John, talk to us about what you've learned or how that's contributed to your perspective on running an organization.
Sure. So my wife's a physical therapist by trade, but she owns an exclusively women's pelvic health physical therapy practice. Totally different businesses, right? Ours is male-dominated, hers is women-owned, women-run, they serve women. But the core values remain the same. We're both working to provide exceptional service towards the customers that we serve, and also empower our team to be good stewards of the company. But for her, again, smaller company, there's 7 people in the company. So when my wife makes a decision about the direction of the company, or a certain process that they're going to implement, it's very impactful, and she has to be able to have the one-on-one conversations to make sure that that decision's resonated with everybody else in the company. And sometimes, with our bigger organizations, we may take those decisions for granted, when really, we should be getting closer with our team and having those one-on-one conversations and saying, hey, this process we just rolled out or this particular decision, give me some feedback on that. What is your perception of it? Just to make sure we're all on the same page.
So you guys have a busy house. John also has a 7-month-old right now.
Yeah.
So I know for myself, I keep up on my leadership skills and my development in a number of different ways. One is just listening to podcasts. I'm grossly addicted to podcasts. But then also, I listen to my peers and listen to them talk about their managers and how their managers, in their eyes, are failing. So that's a great way to learn. How do you learn and keep up on your development?
So I think I always read a lot of books. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I search that information out, especially if I'm dealing with something specific. But where I really, really learn, and this is a humbling thing to say this in front of so many people, but I make mistakes. And when I make mistakes, I really scrutinize them, and I figure out how I'm never, ever going to do that again. And I think that's in this transition into the president of Madison Wood, when you say something to an employee and you have good intention behind it and it comes out wrong, something as simple as that to me is a mistake. And so I'm constantly evaluating the conversations I'm going to have and the conversations that I already had and thinking about how I can better that. And then researching, studying, seeking podcasts, seeking books, seeking information that helps me to do better at an area that I think I probably failed that employee at.
So I enjoy going to this little conference called LBM Strategies. So it's my LBM Strategy. You may have heard of it. In all seriousness, what I like to do is emulate, some of the leaders and people that I admire, that I see doing, really impactful things. Whether it's in this industry, there's a lot of people in this room that I admire. There's also people outside of the industry that you can look to and sort of incorporate some of what they're doing really well into your own practice.
Yeah, they have the term leaders or readers. So I read a lot of books. I cover most of the state of Oregon, so I do a lot of audiobooks, some YouTube to listen, not to watch while I'm driving. That Simon Sinek video I just watched a few weeks ago, it's a classic. So just trying to develop and sharpen the skills, and I seek a lot of feedback from my team of my sales reps that work for me in inside support, and I just need to understand what they need of me so I can lead them better. I also have an incredible team of sales managers that I work with, and we probably talk, 3-4 times a day or so, and we bounce our situations off each other to get some additional guidance and insight. So I think working with a really strong team is a huge benefit, but just don't take your own personal development lightly. I attended Bradley Hartman's OSR Academy last year or 2 years ago to get a different perspective of how to sell in this industry. And so just make the investment in yourselves. And for those of you that are running companies, make an investment in your people. I interviewed a few weeks ago, and I was asked by our CEO, what can I do to provide training, or is there any passion or any program you want to go through? And so he was asking me, like, hey, I'll put the money up. What do you want to do? And he announced recently that we're part of Vistage and that I might have an opportunity to go through the Vistage program. And so I'm really excited about that. Just always understand you can't stop developing yourself. It's a career-long journey, and always take the time to invest in yourself.
I love that. I love the hunger. It's awesome. So you just teed it up a little bit. We're talking about the Simon Sinek video again. And going back to you, David, how did you make that transition of being responsible for just the job that you were doing and then moving to being responsible for the people who were doing the job?
Yeah, like I said, I'm a little bit more of the non-traditional example here because I didn't grow up in this industry. I got hired as a yard manager and then 15 months later into a sales management role and now a regional sales manager role. And so for me, I've probably been on 200 sales calls with my team just because I didn't grow up with that experience, and I wanted to be able to, one, learn from them, but then also understand how they needed help as well. And so it's just been a big focus to seek that feedback and learn the job that we do every day to try to support the team the best we can.
How about you, John?
Yeah, so I guess I was thrust into management pretty early on in my career, and I made a boatload of mistakes along the way. Failed, learned from it, had a lot of successes too, and sort of, followed a career path that took me to some other companies, away from Hamilton, and then ultimately back to Hamilton again. And although there was a lot of uncertainty and sometimes even self-doubt along the way, every single step, whether it was going to business school or going to different companies, certainly helped galvanize my approach and, developed who I am today in my role as president and CEO.
So you didn't catch yourself micromanaging?
No. I mean, here and there, but I've certainly, if I had learned from it and then, found a better way to manage.
Karen?
I think one of the biggest things that we do really well at Madison Wood is we collaborate all the time. And so when you're talking about that transition from going from being a player on the court to coaching, I think that collaboration and sitting there and making decisions in groups allows a couple things. Number one, it allows the other people at the table to feel like they have opportunity to change and to help impact the company as a whole, but it also gives me feedback on what they're thinking and what they think is good about our current strategy and what they don't think is good. And we've been really lucky to develop this unity where there's no finger pointing anymore. We really truly are a team. We sit down at the table as a team. We win and we lose as a team. It's really been oddly difficult for me to give praise because they just turn around and point and we'll go, this guy really helped me get that done, which is great. But that collaboration is how we got there.
So do you think that there are changing work values that folks like yourself that are under 40 are better equipped to manage than people who are older?
John and I were talking last night, and I said something about how I feel like this next generation really just wants a ladder. And he corrected me, which was amazing, and said they want lattice. They want to know that they can move around, whether they're going, up, down, sideways. They want to know that they have those opportunities. And I do think that I understand that, like you said, it's important to us that support culture is a little bit more important to us. It's not just a put your head down and work environment. Like I know most of the people before me, that's how they looked at Madison Wood, and it's a lot more supportive now in how we talk to each other, and the unity is a lot stronger because of that.
I love that, lattice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, because we were talking about it, it's like, you want to give people the opportunity, like maybe they don't want to just move up to be a manager. Like somebody had said earlier today, like not everybody's cut out to be a manager. Maybe the best sales associate is not just destined to be the sales manager. So maybe you want to give them an opportunity to say, move into operations, or move from operations to sales, or sales to administration. So,
or even if they're not happy in management or looking at management and they go, I'm actually happier here, that's okay too. Yeah. Allowing them to not feel like they're forced upwards just because we say they should go. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah.
Yes, similar to that, we have charts in our training rooms and conference rooms that show all the different trajectories that an employee can go when they join PAR, and so they have options in what they do. One thing that I would say is I have noticed this next generation that they do want instant gratification. They want that promotion right now, and a lot of times. And so just helping them understand, you got to develop the skill set. I want you to work towards it so that when the opportunity is there, you're ready. But also this next generation, they value purpose higher than any generation before them. It's most important to them. Money's not everything, and it's most important to them that they work for a company that shares the same values that they do. And so if you guys don't have a strong mission and vision and value statement, it's going to be hard to attract a lot of this next generation that's coming into the workforce.
So it's always good to be on this end of this question, but let's get vulnerable. When's a time that you've really sucked, like failed, fallen down? John.
Okay. So I guess like the story that resonates most with me in this sense is I just started a job at an executive level at another company, And I was tasked with basically making some like wholesale changes within the company to, perpetuate the growth. So there was a sales resource center that we had behind our main sales counter that, sales team would kind of like use to get pricing, books, et cetera. But it was like overrun with old price books, and it was a total mess. It was an absolute cluster. And I was like, we're going to clean this thing up, and we're going to make it, more efficient and, more effective in its use. So long story short, I'm going in, I'm rolling up my sleeves, and I'm moving some stuff around and throwing old price books away from like 2011. And our top inside salesperson, her name was Michelle, she turns to me, she's like, what the hell are you doing? And I was like, well, clearly I'm making better use of the space that we have here. And she's like, well, I use this book for that, and I use this book for this. And her and I sort of like had a little bit of a disagreement, but we kind of agreed that there were some things that were worth keeping, and then there's some that weren't. But then I took a step back, and I'm like, my idea wasn't necessarily a bad one, but my execution was just absolutely horrible. I mean, what I should have done was go right to her, knowing that she was one of our top people, and saying, hey, Michelle, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think about this? If we make some changes here, how can we make this space more efficient for you? And then maybe kind of go down the line to some of the other sales associates. So, that happened. Thankfully, that happened, somewhat early on in my career, well before, my position here. But it certainly, made me appreciate, how to go about managing those situations.
Carrie, how about you?
The first mistake I made was I was the only one that didn't bring a water up here. That was stupid. One of the recent mistakes I made, this one's pretty fresh in my head, we had a really good shop manager. He was awesome. He had a really good attitude. He had a lot to learn, but he had a super good attitude. He really fit. Everybody really liked him. He came to my office one day and he said, Carrie, I am stressed. And I was like, yeah, join the club. We're all stressed. Oh, I'm fine, but thank you. That's very sweet. I was like, we're all stressed. You're in management. We're all stressed. And he's like, yeah, but how do you cope with your stress? I got a new baby at home, building a house. I got a lot going on. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Everybody finds a different way. Wine? I don't know. Do your thing. And it was in the moment, because I was stressed dealing with something, I didn't take his needs seriously. Oh, look, now I have two. Thanks. Ask and you shall receive. I didn't take it seriously. And I just assumed that everybody could handle the same level of stress that I could handle. And I don't know how else to say it. I should have taken that more seriously. I should have sat there and talked to him. I should have gone down to his department and tried to eliminate stressors and tried to pull off of his plate. And I didn't do that. And he ended up taking a lesser job, going to work for an auto shop, and we lost him as an employee because he could not handle the stress. He loved the job. He just couldn't handle the stress. And that was a huge fail on my part. And when he put in his 2 weeks, he came in my office and he actually cried and he was upset. And I was upset because he's such a good employee. But I looked at him and I was like, man, I failed you. I could have done better. I could have gone down and I could have done something about the stress that is on your plate, and that's my job. And I dropped that ball. With the next manager that stepped up to the plate, immediately went down there. We changed something. The overtime happened to be the biggest stressor that he faced, where he'd have to be on call. So never thinking about it because I wasn't on call, I sat down and did the math. And roughly, let's just call it 60 days a year, they were on call for anything that would break at the plant. So they could have just gotten off of their shift and then 9 o'clock at night, something breaks in a cylinder and they got to go back to work. The chances of them actually going, they probably went 3 times a year. It wasn't anything crazy. But the fact that they were on call and that they couldn't go relax or couldn't go to a birthday party or couldn't go do something really stressed them out. So we immediately implemented a change. And now I have a guy that's working a night shift. We stop everything after 8. And if something breaks, nobody gets called in, we'll fix it tomorrow. And now they are maximum 4 days a year on call.
David, you're up.
Well, I could probably fill the rest of the afternoon with all the mistakes that I've made in my career, but we're limited on time here. So I'll share one with you that happened about 1.5 years ago. I had an inside support coordinator that worked on my team, and he was a solid coordinator. And the person, my predecessor that I took over for, gave me a lot of feedback about him before he left that kind of skewed my judgment a little bit. And I had another OSR position open up down the road, which happened to be where this person lived. It would have been a perfect situation. And I talked to him about it, and he really just didn't show a lot of interest, but I didn't recognize the cues and really push him to go after and apply for that position. So I interviewed and offered that position to an employee who was okay, definitely not a rock star. And then fast forward 3 months, and my employee that I didn't push to go after that next opportunity ended up leaving for the competition for the same role that I hired for 3 months before that. And so that one really hurt because it was my fault for not pushing him into that role, and I just didn't try real hard, and I think my thought process was skewed a little bit because of the influence that I had on me from who I took over for that, didn't really feel like he was the right person cut out for that job. And so, we've lost some business because of it. He's taken some of the customers that he worked with before, and so looking back, that was, definitely a leadership blunder on my part. The good news is I stay in contact with him, and he really misses the culture and wants to come back. So I think there's hope to work something out in the future, but I definitely will, listen to my gut next time.
Well, you guys have done an incredible job from learning from your mistakes. It's very honorable. Okay, so I have a final question for you, and then we're going to do another speed round. But what advice do you have for our audience on appealing to the next generation?
Hire people that this generation want to work for. Put people in the right roles that connect with this next generation, that bring them in. A lot of times we get applicants, people in their 20s, 25, that are coming to work there because they see these other 25 to 35-year-olds be really successful at our company. So put people in places that will bridge that gap for you and attract that talent that you're looking for.
So who do those people look like? Are you doing any sort of personality profile, or how do you screen for that type of person?
We're in Madison County, so we don't have that. We don't get we don't get a personality profile. We would weed way too many people out. It's really hard. With us in a small town, we know everybody. I know nearly everybody, and if I don't know you, I know your cousin or your brother or somebody down the line, or your dad. I know somebody. And so for us, it's a different vet, because you kind of know who their family is, what their background is, and it's really easy to be like, oh my, that would be such a killer person to join our team. They have such a great background. They have the right attitude. They have the right goals. And we know they're going to fit in with this group. From a sales perspective, that's our youngest group, and they have to get along. And we have to hire people that get along with that group, because they're going to cover for each other and they're going to work together all the time.
On?
I think it's really important that you can, again, articulate a career path that is really engaging for the person that you're looking to hire. The people that we want to hire have exceptional, attitude, as Rick Davis mentioned, exceptional grit. They have a willingness to learn, and again, you can teach the products. That's the easy part. It's the grit. It's the willingness to learn is super important. We've actually been really successful recently hiring some kids right out of high school, and again, because we see it a lot with Gen Z, like there is some of that hustler mentality, and there's a little bit of an aversion to go to college with student debt and being talking about all of that and the cost of education versus like, well, maybe I'm just going to start my career and really start learning on the job right away. So that's sort of like the personality profile that we're looking to hire for, and certainly hire from within as well.
I think it's important that your business has a very defined list of the reasons why employees should come work for your company. And then we all need to understand that social media is playing a huge part in attracting new talent. It's not just LinkedIn. It's Facebook, it's Instagram. The companies are getting more involved with that, and applicants are actually looking for jobs on those avenues like we haven't ever seen before. Employee referrals. With Cassie's presentation today, I really connected with what she was saying because a lot of what they're doing in detailing is crossed over with PAR. And that employee referral bonus, the best way to get employees hired is through a referral program because somebody has an investment in that person. They know them personally. And we have a two-tiered one where we do $500 at the start and then $500 after 6 months so that we continue to invest in that new employee as they come on board with us. And so, social media, great programs, and being able to highlight that. We were awarded a top places to work in Oregon the last 2 years. And so now we have the ability to push that to LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and all the other social medias that I don't even know what are called because I'm not really a techie person. But just use those tools and those awards you win to brag on your company a little bit because that's going to help you attract talent. And just make sure that your purpose is a part of that because the new generation, they want to feel connected with the company that they're coming to work for.
Okay, speed round. So, and also right after this, we just have 3 real quick that we're going to go through. And we'll have some lucky contestants too. But after that, we'll have probably a time for a question or 2. So be thinking of that too. So David, you just kind of queued this up. True or false, social media will play a big role in attracting talent in the future.
Yes, true.
Yeah, absolute truth. Have you seen our Instagram account?
Yes, everybody sign up for John's Instagram account.
100%.
I agree with them.
Kind of a gimme. Yeah. Okay, so fill in the blank. AI will replace what % of your company's jobs moving forward? Starting with you, David.
So like employees, replace employees?
Yeah. What percentage of your company's jobs?
AI is still a foreign language to me. I'd say in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe 10%, but that's just really a loose guess.
I'd say about 10%, manufacturing and operations related.
You guys are getting really bad at this.
I was literally also going to say 10%. Yeah.
10%.
I'm going to say 0.
Good answer. Good answer. Okay.
So our company has already gotten rid of 3 positions due to AI.
Okay. Yeah. What positions is the question?
We had somebody that was all day long, they were building charges by hand of what to put up on the cylinders. That automatically does itself now. Stuff similar to that.
So the number one thing that everyone can leave here and do immediately to build a better team. David.
Go back to your yards, your corporate office, and listen to your employees. Ask for some genuine feedback and make them feel comfortable so that they can solicit the feedback and be open, and you'll be amazed by what you'll learn.
Focus on 3 things: culture, people, and financials.
Collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. Get your team on the same page.
Ready?
Sure. I agree with the collaborate. Go back and talk to everybody. It's something we're going to do.
Awesome. Well, thanks to this awesome panel, Carrie, John, and David. Thank you so much for your leadership. Any quick questions from the audience? Jay.
David, you talked about a training lead. Can you define that a little bit more? Full-time, part-time? What are their duties?
The training lead? Yeah, so every location has a training lead. So they track the training for all the employees. They'll facilitate some training. They'll also partner them with the best person to provide that training. And so it's just an additional accountability piece that we put in the yards to make sure that nobody's slipping through the cracks and nobody's getting missed. And so they report up to they kind of sideways report to the yard manager, but they also report up to the training and culture department. Yes.
Is that their only job?
Yeah. It's a big investment.
One more question? Oh, got.
So Carrie had mentioned a couple of different times the phased retirement program, and I'm just wondering, is there a tendency to look to that former leader rather than to you, or what did you guys put in place to make sure that they're not limiting, your authority or your, I guess, authority in that position? I would think that it would be interesting if the old boss is always there. How do you build that relationship from your standpoint?
So let me use an example of HR. Our personnel manager kind of did HR, retired. He comes in on Tuesdays and Thursdays now. Our new HR person is there Monday through Friday. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, if he's scheduling interviews, that past manager is sitting in and helping. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that person is not there. So he's still very much in my office. We're still talking strategy. We're still talking about what we're doing over here, what we're doing over there. We have plenty of that one-on-one time, but he's able to pick up tips, tricks from the Tuesday, Thursday time frame where I don't actually have time as the president to go spend time teaching him that, nor did I go through HR and really have the experience to go train him there. So for me, I focus with him on long-term strategy and where my vision is and what our vision should be together, and then he incorporates that past manager and that input. And there's no butting heads, but that manager worked for me as well, so under the same pretense.
Thanks again to the panel, and thank you all for your time and attention.